We're going to get started now. Hello and welcome to Developing an eBook, our experience and how you can do it too. My name is Camilla Tapp. I'm a research assistant with EvidenceNetwork.ca, and we really wanted to do this webinar after we did an eBook and share some of our experience, some of the things that we did and did right and didn't do right, and then also some advice on how you can do it too if you're looking to develop an eBook. So I'm going to do the slide presentation that you've seen and have all been circulated, and then we'll answer questions at the end. So if you have questions at any time throughout, please feel free to type them in the chat box in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, and I will answer them. And then we can have a discussion, and hopefully this provides a bit of insight for you as well. So. Okay, so the first question that we wanted to ask was, why an ebook? We had seen that a lot of people had iPads, Kindles, Nooks, whatever type of e-reader, and we're using them a lot more. So students are using them to study. I know my parents are using them for bringing their books with them wherever they are. So it was a lot more common to see e-reader devices. As well, that comes along with the desire for ebooks. So if you have a book, people are saying, oh, can I get it online? Can I see it somewhere else? They want to be able to have the usability and the features of an e-reader device. And a lot of these features are embedding hyperlinks, being able to search for any keyword, all these things that really make e-readers attractive and ebooks easy to use. The other good thing is that you can have a 450-page book right at your fingertips. You can have 10 or 100 450-page books at your fingertips wherever you are. And then the other thing is that there's different audiences. So obviously a younger generation is really interested in e-readers and living on their computers and electronic devices. So it's a different audience to have your ebook available to. Now, of course, that being said, there's resistance. So not everyone is interested in e-readers or iPads or devices like that. And they don't really see it as a value to a book. So they see a book as being still their #1 go-to. And there is a way to get around this and kind of cater to all audiences. So what we chose to do was make it available in traditional PDF formats, and then also be able to diversify and have a number of tablet formats. So this means if you are one of those people who don't want an e-reader and only like your book, you can still take the PDF and print it or print sections of it that you find applicable. So in our experience, we combined 127 op-eds, which were produced with experts from EvidenceNetwork.ca since it was, I believe it was April 2011 until about October of 2012, so about 18 months. We did both English and French, as are available on the website, and then accompanied it with the photo that was also available on the website. Now, of course, with these type of op-eds, there are hyperlinks to studies or relevant information, so we did include some of that where applicable. And the results were quite astonishing. So we launched November 23rd, 2012. We initially made it available in PDF and iBook formats, and I'll explain why in a couple minutes. And then from there, we expanded and converted to Kindle, Kobo, Scribe, and numerous other platforms. So from the beginning, we decided to make it available for free. All the op-eds are available on the website for free already, and it wasn't a venture to make money. It was purely a venture to circulate our information a bit wider. So in the 7 months since launch, we've had 9,350 views or reads through all of the platforms. And this is considered a Canadian bestseller in comparison. So we were really, really happy to see this many people view it and use it. And so I'll explain how the circulation was. So the circulation was, as you can see here, divided into page views from Evidence Network, Apple ebook downloads, Scribe, and Google Play. So this is very clear that you can see there's some formats that take up more than others. We really anticipated the Apple book and being available on the iTunes bookstore to be the big place where it was utilized. And that's not what we can see here clearly. So Scribe is actually an interesting platform. So as you can see, there's one huge peak of 650 downloads in a day or so. And that was really because we posted to Scribd, which if you haven't seen it, you should go take a look. It's a place to load your content, which we did in PDF format, and then have it viewed a number of times. You can view it actually in the website. So what happened in that spike actually was that we were featured on their health homepage, and that drove up our views significantly. And then it has also stayed as a pretty dominant platform to be viewed on. So then the other thing that we were really surprised by is we thought that the Apple iBook would really take off and have a significant number of views, which it did have a lot of views, and we're happy that it had that many. But the dominant one was really PDF. So we created it in Apple, and I'll explain this again. We can create it in the Apple software and then convert it to PDF, and had the PDF available on our website as well as uploaded in some other locations. And that was the dominant portion of the utilization of it. So that factored into our future decisions into what we think was really a priority. The other thing that we were kind of surprised by was who actually was utilizing this book. So all the content is created from a Canadian point of view for the most part. Canadian experts, Canadian content written for Canadians. But almost a quarter of the people who use it were not from Canada. So Canada is obviously the dominant, but then the United States is second, and then we get a really global perspective on it. So it wasn't just Canadians using it. So of course there's some costs that we learned in the first time that we ventured into ebooks. It wasn't a smooth process, but there were some learning curves. So the formats, which I'll discuss, is kind of the place that we didn't anticipate there being troubles. So Apple, when we applied, had a lot of stringent process for obtaining a publishing account and then publishing each ebook. It had really strict rules on what you couldn't put in, and size and quality and all that kind of thing was really particular. Also, we had troubles with Kindle. I know that Kindle is a very popular platform, but it was tricky because they wouldn't allow us to offer a book for free, so we actually had to make it for charge, and would only allow us to offer it for free for certain amounts of time, even though the book's available elsewhere. So there's been some success applying, but even Kindle had its concerns. And then we also experienced a bit of hiccup when we transitioned to Kobo. So we converted to Kobo, and the formatting was strange and everything was kind of moving around. So it wasn't the quality level that we had anticipated. And of course, there's a time investment. So yes, you invest a significant amount of time to create an ebook. This is not an afternoon project. It does take some time. It was mostly my time. It was a research assistant time. But there's some things that are very similar to traditional publishing. So formatting your book, bringing all the text together, designing what you want your book to look like, doing a cover, that's all things that are exactly the same as if you were doing it through a publishing house. But the difference really comes in approval times. So traditional publishing does take months to years. So if we had published this book, we would not have it released for sure at this point, and it would probably still be in the editing stages. Whereas e-publishing takes weeks. So like I said, we started this idea at the end of July and published it in November. So the approval times were weeks, not months, not years. So it's much quicker to make whatever your information is available. So we did seek a lot of feedback on our ebook. We heard very positive things, which is great. And we had people using it in ways that we never had imagined. So we had media using it as a background for stories. We've had students using it. We've had other research assistants at the Manitoba Centre of Health Policy also using it. So great uptake. And so stemming from this, we are releasing a second ebook coming this fall, but we are going to make some changes. So we're going to choose a different development and format software, and we're really going to focus on PDF, because clearly PDF is something that a lot of people did utilize and is pretty common right now. So we are going to keep some things the same. So the design, we had great feedback on, simple layout. The setup was good, but we are going to add a couple features. So things like more hyperlinking, possibly videos, infographics. There's literally an endless world of things to add. So now I'm going to move into the how-to. So really, how do you make an ebook? What are the steps? What's different? What are the things that we've learned that you could probably save some time on? So I'll go through, this is the full list, so I'll go through them one by one. So first is photo permissions. This is something that most people don't consider that significant, but it can be a time-consuming process. So if you see our book, we have photos that are used from iStockPhoto.com, and purchasing through this website allows us to have permissions to use in a certain number of publications. So we have purchased the rights to use them. But you also have to get permissions for any other photos you use. So we have a cover photo on the front of the book, and we had to obtain permission from the photographer who took the photo as well as the artist who did the installation, the artistic installation. So obtain both to make sure that we did have the correct permissions to use it. There's also some things that you need to consider. So there's a lot of things like government buildings. You often have to obtain special permission to use them in photos. Photos of products like toys or something that's copyrighted also really needs to be approved in a very formal way. So that can take some time, and it also can change your idea of what you're going to use as a photo. So then, of course, are copyrights. So whatever text, image, figures, whatever you use must be your own copyrights. And often, if you are not having your sufficient copyrights in order, your photo or your book as a whole can be refused. So Kindle or Apple will say, no, this doesn't comply. We can be possibly liable, so we're not going to include it in our store whatsoever. So with Evidence Network, what we have on all of our op-eds is a Creative Commons license, and this allows us to publish them because the author does retain the rights. And so we do have the ability to publish them in a book. So you have to consider that. And also there's some funny things like limitations on quoting length. You can only quote a certain amount before it becomes not your copyright. So as a self-publisher, it's really important that you do your own research. Be sure that you know what you're allowed to use, what you're not allowed to use. Even if you're collaborating with someone else, it's really important that you make sure that the copyrights are yours so that you don't get into trouble. And this is one of the downsides of not working with a publishing house, is that you are self-publishing, so you have to know all this information yourself and kind of navigate. So your text, the easiest way to bring all your text together is in a Word or a text document. So it's the same type of idea you would use if you're doing a hard copy book. So you want to be really consistent with formatting. Little things like healthcare is 1 word or 2 words, dashes, what kind of structure you use is really important that you do in the Word document, because often it's really hard to manipulate once you got into your formatting stage. So this can be time consuming, but it's worth the effort. But it's also it gives you some benefits. So it's a pretty good judge of how long your book will be. So if you're a little overzealous and have 1,000 pages, then you kind of know that earlier on in the stage, as opposed to getting all the way down and deciding that's not how far you want to go. The one thing that we have at Evidence Network is we do have colleagues that work with Evidence Network who are editors as trade, and so they have edited all the op-eds already. And so we have an editor in-house that does a lot of the copy edit type jobs. So we suggest that you would consider hiring a copy editor to look through your book, make sure there's no obvious issues or text errors or even spelling errors, as simple as it sounds. It's really important to make sure your book is professional, obviously, but also just to have someone else look at it. This can be also really good for academics and researchers. So often academics and researchers use a level of language that may not make their book as accessible as they would hope. And so that's a good opportunity to kind of judge where you are on that. So the next part is a title. So part of organizing your text is, of course, an appropriate title. It's the hook, it's the marketing aspect. And the thing that we really wanted to focus on was being very clean and very direct. So a lot of times if you're doing, say, an article that you're getting published, you want to kind of add to the mystery, but that's not the goal in this case. You really want to make sure that the keywords that are the content and the base of your book are used in your title, because this is how it's going to be red flagged and brought up as important on a search. So may it be on the actual bookstore, may it be in Google, may it be in any search engine. You want to really make sure that you have the keywords used so that your book will be discovered more often. So development format, so there's many options. These are the main softwares that are used. So Apple iBook Author is what we chose to use in this first round. The reason why we did this is because it would allow us to have access to Apple, which can kind of be hard to get approvals for, but also it's a pretty user-friendly software, so it doesn't take long to learn. It's not, you need to learn how to do full design package. It's very straightforward. It has templates. It was really great to work with in my experience, but there's some downsides to it, like anything else. So they export in an Apple-only format that is really easy to upload to the Apple Store, but to upload anywhere else can be a challenge. So converting between the formats can be kind of difficult. The other good thing about Apple is that it does export as a PDF. The PDF we also had some troubles with just in terms of making the table of contents. It wasn't as smooth as it could be, and it was only in one orientation, so it didn't flip between the two. So that was the one. Calibre is another one that is often used. You can just publish your Microsoft Word document to it and it converts it all the way through. The one that we're actually going to choose to use in the second round is Adobe InDesign. So a lot of people are familiar with this. So InDesign is used, of course, for many different graphics layouts, but to use it for an ebook is really important because you can export from Adobe InDesign into what's called EPUB 3, which I'll mention in a bit, which is kind of the universal ebook format. And so it's really applicable, so you can apply it and publish it to the bookstores much easier. So then there's other things, conversion software. So there's converting between the different formats, which of course has its ups and downs. It usually doesn't come across quite as well as it should, but there's many options. So it's really finding the one that works for you, talking to people and seeing which one really fits your needs. If you know InDesign, that might be the right choice. If you're not sure, if you're handing it off to someone, Apple iBook Author is a pretty good option as well. So design. If you see on the left, this is actually a picture of what the design package through Apple looks like. Very streamlined, very simple, and so you can kind of get an idea of what options it is. It's not overly complicated, so you can do it yourself. But just like any other design, you're wanting to make sure that you have a very smooth and very consistent look, which is easy to do, and making sure that the focus is really on being user-friendly. You want to make sure that your book is functional and achieves all the goals that you want without being overly fancy or overly complex. So the other great thing is that you can use templates. A lot of these different formats have templates, and you can either choose to do that or you can take a template and manipulate it to what you would really want. So the next thing is picking your price. We ventured into the land of free ebooks, but if you do choose to make your book available for pay, it's really important that you pick accurately. So being able to say maybe a free ebook isn't really what the value of our book is, so we're going to set the price point. And it may not be exactly the price point as you would sell a hardcover book or a book in a bookstore, but being able to correctly assign a value for your book. Now there are complications with non-free ebooks, which is why we chose to do, another reason why we chose to do a free ebook. One of the things is that non-free ebooks, so for pay ebooks, do require you to give your banking information when you apply for a publishing license or publishing account. You have to get tax information if you're selling in the US. You have to do a lot of more steps that can complicate things that may not be what you are looking for, and maybe added complexity to the ebook process. The other thing is that depending on the store that you're applying to, you can apply for different publishing rights. So through Apple, if you're applying, you can apply just as a non-pay ebook or a free ebook publishing license, and that's much easier to obtain than a for-cost or pay publishing license. So these are all things to consider when you're deciding if you want to make it for charge and how much. So like I have mentioned, not every format is the same. So you'll hear these pretty commonly when you're in the ebook world. So EPUB is the universal ebook standard. It is most widely accepted by Apple, Kindle, Kobo. There's different versions, so there's EPUB 1, 2, 3. There's EPUB Plus, all these different kinds of versions of the standard, which makes things more confusing. But you can, as I said, you can export as that in InDesign, which is what we're choosing to do this year. Apple's proprietary format is iBook, so when you create something in their software, it exports as iBook. And that does have more flexibility. There's more animations you can do. It's fit exactly for an iPad or an iPhone, which makes it a bit more direct. You can also use a .doc or an MS Word document. It's accepted by some bookstores, but you lose a lot of the functionality. So clicking on hyperlinks doesn't always work. Seeing any animations or embedding videos or even photos can be really complicated with this format. PDF is readable on most mobile devices. Some of them, getting a PDF document on it is not as consistent, but the other plus side is that it is accessible on desktop computers. So you can have it not just be an e-reader device only. So once all that is done and you have picked the design and picked all your text, then you need to upload to each individual ebook site. So it's not like you just put it into one ebook circulation place and it goes everywhere. You have to manually upload to Apple, to Kindle, to Kobo, to whatever is your end goal. And this can, as I said, take time. You have to create accounts, you have to put in the banking information if you're making a pay book, and then often there is an approval process. So your book must be approved, but also your publishing ability as a publisher needs to be approved as well. And the other thing is that don't forget the non-pay sites. So Google Books, Scribd, library sites are all very worthwhile non-traditional bookstores. So they may not be the big names, but as you saw in the graph earlier, there's a lot of pickup from them. There's a lot of people frequenting those sites. And also if you're doing a free book, it's easier to get circulated through that. So we had a lot of people who would embed our link in their sites and then get more uptake from that. And it really depends. So your choices on what you decide to do will really be all about return on your time investment. So if you're going to publish this book to the Apple bookstore and it maybe gets 100 reads or download, is that your goal? Great. If not, then maybe you should choose something else. So promotion, obviously you can't just put an ebook out there and expect it to be a bestseller. So we did pretty extensive promotion of this ebook. As you can see on the left-hand side, we did a formal press release, including the image of the book, including links. We did everything, all social media, Twitter, Pinterest, LinkedIn, YouTube, everything we could on social media. We also, for everyone who works at Evidence Network, we included the URL link to our email signature. And we actually found that people were not really focusing on the content of our email, but would more often click on our URL link to our ebook. So it was very successful. We also have promotion on EvidenceNetwork.ca, which is still one of the top 2 things on our homepage. So it's very commonly used and clicked on there. We also created business cards. So these are just little cards that have the cover of the book on one side and then the available locations on the back, as well as the link, so that we could, if we're going to a conference or something, people don't really use business cards nowadays, but will more so hand out these so that, you know, if you're at a conference, other people can see the book and have a bit of tangible evidence of the book in your hand. Also, there was word of mouth, so we talked to everyone that we knew to try and download the book, and of course, it's the traditional method. And then we also did a poster presentation. So this past March, I went to London, England, to do a poster presentation on the ebook and kind of our experience in uploading it, and that really helped, I think, too, in terms of getting some other academics to see it. So there's another option, which is outsourcing your ebook. And this is not something that we have done directly, but we are going to bring it up as it is something that people consider. So there are companies and individuals who will create your ebook for you and at a cost. The feedback that I've heard from most of the people who have used this type of service is that they can be costly, and they can be costly to do it right. So often they would get their ebook back and not have it be exactly what they wanted. So the design or the formatting wasn't the way that it would have been if they had done it themselves. and a lot of people don't really understand how much time it takes and what it would look like. So it's hard to know exactly what you can change. Whereas if you do the book yourself, you know what you can change, you know if you want to move something. So the other thing is often they'll give you the format, but then you have to upload it. And if you don't want to upload it to all the sites, which is pretty time intensive, they'll do that, but it's another cost. So once again, it's one of those things that you have to see what's the value cost for you. And once again, this is more research to see if this is really what you want to do for your ebook. The other thing that I will talk about here is once you do your ebook and have it circulated, there is another option, which is print on demand. So there's a way that you can publish your ebook to a store and have it be available. So if someone who really does want the hard copy, hasn't transitioned over to e-readers, they can see the book, say, oh, I really want a hard copy of that, and get it printed on demand right then and there and shipped to their house. So it's like you're buying from Amazon. It's the same thing. And so that is a little bit more costly because it's printing books once at a time, but that is another option that we will explore in the next ebook as well. So speaking of the next ebook, it is coming fall 2013. So this is a sneak peek of the cover. No one's seen this yet, but so we are using the things that we've learned through this and really making sure that we can improve upon it and then also share what we've learned. So thank you so much for joining. Please feel free to ask any questions if you have them. Yeah, I can see the question. Okay, so Christine, thank you for the question. She asks, did you do anything proactive to become a feature unscribed? Funnily enough, we didn't. We really just posted it and had it featured on the health page that day. So Kathleen O'Grady, who works with us at Evidence Network, did post it there and post it through the Evidence Network account, which we had a previous account with them, so we had posted some things, but we didn't do anything to really be featured. It was just something that they saw our book and put it on the health page. So we were really lucky, and it also kind of contributes that the health page wasn't as active as some other, for example, breaking news or that kind of thing, but we were lucky to be featured on the page for sure. I'll just read this question. So thanks, Dennis, for the question. He asks, what considerations were there for formatting for different devices, or did you find PDFs were fine regardless of the device? Also, is Apple's authoring software available on Windows? I think that, just to answer, I'll answer in reverse. Apple's authoring software, I'm not sure if it's available on Windows. I believe it might not be. And that's unfortunately common with Apple. But in terms of considerations formatting for different devices, what we saw was that the EPUB standard was pretty great to be consistent on devices, except Kobo, where we did have some issues. But the formatting is pretty consistent. So the EPUB formatting structure really knows each different device and will format it specifically for the device. So it's not that you're having to sit there and say, Kindle is this size by this size, and then Apple's this size by this size, and it rotates when you do this and not when you do this. So there's not that type of particulars that you have to do. But PDF was good. Once again, it doesn't always, if you've seen an Apple book on an iPad, it'll flip very nicely and change the layout based on what orientation you're in. So that was something that is lost with PDF. And once again, with PDF, you can't do things like embed videos as easily. You can't do animations. All that kind of thing is lost. But once again, you can do that with other software solutions. So InDesign does have more of that ability. So I hope that answers your question. Great. Okay, thanks again for the question. It's the iStock photos. Were there any hindrances in getting permissions? So it wasn't a hindrance in getting permission in terms of the iStock photos. What it really was on our end, we had to search through each time you, sorry, I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with iStock photos. So each time you buy an iStock photo, you agree to an agreement with them. And what we really did is we looked specifically at that agreement, and that agreement really dictated how many times it could be published and where, and is it in print or is it an ebook, and so it's really particular to that source. So there are some open source locations where you can use their pictures, for example, where you don't have to pay, but that agreement with them is also unique, right? So it's really being sure of what you're signing, being sure of what agreement you have with whichever photo provider you have, to make sure that you're not infringing upon their copyright. Okay, I'll read Christine's comment. She says, can I share a recent discovery of a great tool source? Just found yesterday at Clockwork Talk, and click on resources. Really helpful for writers and other creators. Thanks so much. We'll definitely share that and make sure everyone who sees the webinar after has access to that. So once again, for anyone else who joined late, feel free to ask any questions in the bottom right-hand corner. I'm happy to chat. I've never heard of that. I'll have to note that down. Great. Thanks, Christine. Feel free to email me also if you have any questions. We're happy to help you from Evidence Network to you guys. So if there's no more questions, I'll stay on for a little bit, but feel free to ask anything else. It's your last chance. And then I'll say thank you for everyone for coming. Thank you, Ayat. So just as Dennis is typing, hopefully a question. Oh, session read InDesign or the Apple iBooks software. Great, okay. Fantastic, Dennis. Thank you for the comments. So thank you everyone for attending. I'm glad you all could make it. Hopefully this is really beneficial. We will be posting this on EvidenceNetwork.ca and circulating a link so you can watch it over again, or if there's someone, a colleague who missed the presentation and you think it would benefit them, you can circulate it to them as well. And feel free to send around the slides. I'm happy to share information. Otherwise, thank you so much, and hopefully you'll attend another EvidenceNetwork.ca webinar in the future. Good.
Great job.
Cool.
Really good. Were you ever smooth? Wow.